second official episode of the Train and Learn series, where we get to put out content for you guys where you can use it when you're training or just whenever you want, just to learn just more about nutrition, training, all the above, stuff like that. Today we have a new guest on. This is Nico Chiodo.
How's it going, guys?
He's done quite a bit in terms of fitness, and he's gone from like powerlifting to as well as bodybuilding. And now he's doing some really cool stuff going into physical therapy. So Nico, you just want to kind of start off by explaining kind of your fitness journey and kind of where you're at now and what your like goals are, both in the gym and then both like long-term too with like.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Good to be here, Chase. Thanks for having me on. Right now I'm kind of just focusing a little bit on my powerlifting. It's a good time to do it. I mean, there's nothing else for me to do. And I do have a home gym like 4 feet away from my bedroom. So there's really no excuse for me to not go to the gym in that regard. But yeah, it's been a good time for me to just focus on all the little things that I don't typically make time for in the gym. And I think that's kind of what everybody should be, focusing on. There's always something you can do. So in terms of physical therapy school, I'm actually going in May, and it's a online program. Half like you go there and you do like clinicals and you work with like patients. So they call it like a hybrid blended program. The nice part about that is now that all this quarantine stuff is going on, most schools are pushing back their programs, but mine's still going to be able to start on time. Awesome. So that's pretty awesome. It's just going to be, they bumped it from like 90% online to like 100% online. So yeah, it's pretty sweet. Cool. But yeah, thank you for introducing me. That's a little bit about me.
Awesome. Do you kind of want to start off by getting into, I'm sure this is something like a lot of people want to know. Let's start off with, in powerlifting, what were like your highest totals in, let's say, bench, squat, and deadlift? What were your highest totals?
Gotcha. Great question, Chase. I've done a handful of powerlifting meets. I think I've done 3. The first one I ever did was actually like 3 months after a bodybuilding show. Oh, wow. So I had about 3 months to totally shift gears there, start eating a ton of calories, pack on a bunch of strength and weight. That one was back in 2016, I want to say. And I believe I totaled about 1,500 there. For my first competition, that was awesome. I was very excited. I had a lot of help from people coaching me. And yeah, so I mean, to this day, that was probably the most successful meet I had in terms of hitting all my attempts. I've done some other meets where I totaled higher, but I ended up making a little mistakes. And you know how powerlifting is. If you do one little thing, even slightly off, like the whole lift is just like totally ruined. Yeah. So yeah, I kind of screwed up a little bit in my later meets, didn't do as well as I would have liked to. But right now I'm focusing on competing in nationals for the USAPL coming up in like 6 months or something like that. I'll be competing in the 83 kgs, even though I'm absolutely nowhere near that right now. So I have to lose like 50 pounds. And yeah, at that meet, I'm hoping to total at least like 1,700. Maybe looking at like a 675 deadlift would be nice. And a 455 bench. And then hopefully squats the tough one, but hopefully like a low 600 squats. I mean, I'm just not playing with the 600. So yeah, everything's going well. Everything's going really well. Right now has been a great time. I've been just, biting my ego, dropping the weight significantly, and, just focusing on the smallest little things. When you have so much time on your hands, there's just so much stuff that you don't make time for in the gym that you could come, and focus on now, whether it's like flexibility, mobility, agility, any other words. So yeah, I think it's a great time for people to really focus on things like that. And then when they do come back, they come back with like new weapons in their arsenal, so to speak, that's going to help them achieve their goals, if you may.
Yeah. So, that total is like so insane. I think there'd be a lot of people who would be interested to hear like where you started and how long it takes to get to like something that like those numbers are like, they're hard to even fathom how big they are and like how long it takes to progress from there and kind of where you started.
Well, so I pretty much started, it goes way back to when I was like 12. I'm not going to waste time in there, but I started lifting for sports, just like probably any other kid in football, or I was in wrestling at the time. Started lifting. And then by the time I got into high school, all the lifting I did, I didn't really realize it, but, I was already fairly strong at least benching by the time I got into high school. And it was like day one of football camp. And they were like, all right, guys, today we're going to bench. And so I was putting up decent numbers on bench, and everyone was like, what the hell? And I think that right there, like that very moment, was just like the biggest and best motivation for me moving forward in my whole lifting career. Because I was like, damn, this is something that I guess I have a little bit of a head start on. I didn't really realize it. Since that day, I've loved lifting. That being said, once you get past the first couple of years, you can't just lift to have fun anymore. Like a lot of people think, you can go into the gym and just get a pump and this and that. And it's like, I did that and probably wasted my time for like 2, maybe even 3 years, where I could have been, programming,
Sure.
getting stronger, dieting correctly. So I didn't learn anything about progressive overload or counting calories or macronutrients, micronutrients. I didn't learn anything about that until probably freshman year at Wesleyan. So once I figured all that stuff out is when everything just kind of skyrocketed for me. It's like the best thing I could have ever discovered. I learned how to diet and program at the same exact time, literally. Obviously I've gotten better at it over time, but yeah, those are the 2 biggest things that easily contributed to my strength. When I bodybuilded, my size that I got, all that type of stuff. So yeah, it's just train smarter, not harder. Something that, my dad always taught me at a young age. So
Yeah. Awesome.
yeah.
So how about, I know like so many people do it different. Like there's some people who are in the fitness industry are squatting every day. There's some people who are doing like taking all different approaches. What's kind of your approach to like right now, how many days a week are you squatting? How many you're benching, and how many you deadlift usually?
Yeah. I think going off of level of experience first, I think somebody who's just a beginner can definitely get away with, probably doing more frequency of squatting, benching, or deadlifting, or whatever heavy exercise they want to get better at. I think the more experienced you get and the heavier weights you can handle, and you're able to go, 99% of your max without, in other words, without hesitating, you can train pretty hard. I don't think you should be doing that benching, squatting, deadlifting. It could get really taxing doing those 3 exercises. So somebody who's experienced, I would say I wouldn't deadlift more than twice a week, like max.
Yeah.
I only deadlift once a week. Squatting you probably twice a week is you probably are safe squatting twice a week, but you kind of got to go off how you feel. There's some days where I'm just like sore as hell if I squat on like Wednesday and I'm supposed to squat again on Saturday. But benching, I do hit 3 times a week. I don't really mind. I think that one, it's nothing too crazy. One of the days, if I do 3 bench days a week, maybe 2 of them will be remotely heavy. Maybe 1 will be a little bit more for hypertrophy. I'm always mixing that type of stuff up. And then maybe the 3rd one will be like for speed or something like that. So, but overall, I would say 3 for bench, 2 for squat, 1 for deadlift for somebody who is lifting maximum loads quite frequently. If you're a beginner and you're just now hitting the gym, just now hitting strength lifts, you could probably hit all those multiple times a week. You're probably not used to going 99% RPE 10. So, frequency definitely varies on level of experience, if I had to guess.
Awesome.
So.
And then like outside of that, in terms of like the other stuff, do you do like you do more of like you do progressive overload with your lifting, which is a really awesome approach. So like, do you do a lot of accessory stuff, and like how many days are you doing that? Like, are you in the gym total, would you say, per week?
Yeah. So
the main 3.
I'm hitting 6 days a week. Right now I'm in a point of my split where I have like 3 powerlifting days, where I'm just hitting, all 3 lifts or at least variations of them. Like we just talked about, I don't deadlift heavy more than once a week, but, and right now it's pretty intense. But in terms of accessory lifts, I typically keep it pretty bodybuilding based for the most part. Like I like to kind of mix them together, try to maintain an athletic kind of ability. So like half the week I'll do a lot of just power, strength training. I'll even put like some explosive lifts in there. Believe it or not, I'm even doing like some cleans sometimes, just making sure nobody's looking. And yeah. And then the other half of the week is just straight hypertrophy, working on isolated exercises, a lot more reps. The whole time, though, I'm always following some sort of progression or progressive overload, if you may. So
Yeah.
even with accessories, even with isolation exercises, if I'm not trying to go heavier, because it doesn't make much sense to go really heavy with a fly or something, I'll progress with reps, or I'll progress with, time under tension or slower eccentrics or something like that.
Yeah.
Um, you don't always have to progress with intensity and add weight over time. That's not the only way to do it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I definitely hit a lot of isolation exercises. I work out like a bodybuilder half the time for the most part. So
Awesome. Is there
yeah.
anything we kind of didn't touch on, or anything else you want to cover without like giving away your programming, but kind of what you do in terms of your programming with progressive overload? I feel like someone going into lifting, that is the number one approach they should take, and you take such a smart approach with it because, like, to be honest, you could do progressive overloading for a year straight and keep your calories at maintenance, and you'll still see yourself gaining
That's a
noticeable
that's a
muscle.
great point. I'd
Yeah.
love to talk about that exact
Yeah.
concept. A lot of people ask me, and I'm sure they ask you all the time, is it better to, go in phases like bulking or cutting,
Yeah.
or is it better to, kind of do them really slow over time, or even maintain over time and just kind of replace muscle with fat? I think option B is definitely the better approach. I think getting to your body weight and then just, eating maintenance calories, because that's, in my opinion, more than enough to have great workouts, feel good. You're not going to feel depleted on maintenance calories, especially if you're choosing high volume foods and stuff like that. You'll have great workouts, and I think you'll even see the most progress. Some people take an absurd calorie surplus
Yeah.
and they kind of overdo it, like me, unintentionally, but a lot of people do that, and I think you just put on a lot of body fat depending on how fast you do it, but it's just excessive, and it's, yeah, a lot of calories is great, but it's not really that necessary. So I think kind of eating maintenance calories, applying progressive overload, trying to get stronger or better in anything that you're doing. Take, for example, if you're doing strength and conditioning and you're working with a bunch of athletes on speed, I'm definitely not the expert on that area, but you could absolutely keep applying ways
Yeah.
to, increase the demands on the body and the muscles and bones
Yeah.
and all that. So,
Sure.
yeah, so that's a good question. But yeah, I think, do you ever like kind of run your athletes through any sort of like periodization with like stuff for speed and stuff for agility and conditioning? Like what kind of progression do you ever implement?
Yeah. So yeah, you even see it with. It's very similar to, like, take for example, like conditioning, for example. Like I utilize something called repeat sprintability. So kind of how you could build their conditioning is you do. It's a very simple concept. You could use like incline sprints, or you could do like sled sprints, or
Yeah,
sometimes just do a straightaway sprint. And it's very simple. You just add more reps every week, and you do about 45-second rests. So say the first week you're doing about 12 reps. Next week you do 15, 18, so on and so forth. And you could deload
gotcha.
back to the one you did before. So it's kind of the same
Yeah,
idea with lifting, with conditioning, where you're progressively overloading that one's like,
exactly. Yeah,
but same idea.
that's exactly it. I mean, it's a very broad concept.
Yeah.
Um, it's very easy to apply to literally anything. Even if it's like you just got surgery on your knee, that's actually how it started, was to rehab people. It's a great form of physical therapy as well as strength training, and I think that it's such a broad concept that so many people are not utilizing. Like I said before, including myself, for years, I was just going into the gym and chasing the pump and just like, lifting more or less with no strategy or anything.
Yeah.
And because I was lean at the time, I thought it was working. I was looking good. I had good pumps and I was shredded for the most part, but my strength was terrible. I was
Yeah.
weaker than I ever was. And later on in life, I learned that I probably had way less muscle mass, no matter what I looked like.
Yeah.
Because I was so weak, I had little to no muscle mass. So once again, once I learned about macronutrients, how to manipulate those calories, and progressive overload into my programs, everything just fell into place perfectly and everything started to skyrocket. I think macronutrients, and I think you can agree with this too, are if like progressive overload is like 10% of it, macronutrients in a proper diet is the 90% of it. Like,
Yeah, absolutely.
and I think that's so important, and it's something that people are just kind of now starting to realize, macros and calories. But if you're trying to reach a goal, and you might have the best workout program literally in the world, but if you're not getting enough protein in, or if you're not hitting, the proper macronutrients, whatever that may be, you're doing it with, both arms tied behind your back for the most part. So
yeah,
it's definitely makes it difficult.
What's your approach with macros? So the approach I take, I've tried counting all macros for a while, and just kind of the approach that I feel like works for me now is I just pay attention to protein and my overall calories, and then fats and carbs I kind of play around with. And I notice like I feel okay whether I go higher fat or higher carb and stuff like that.
Yeah.
My main focus right now, so I don't drive myself crazy, is I focus on hitting my protein every day and then hitting my overall calories for the day. So what's kind of your approach, and what have you kind of liked?
Yeah, dude, that's a great approach. That's exactly how I do it. I think that's a little bit more of an experienced approach, even though if I am working with somebody new, I try to give them that approach because it seems like the easiest and the one that'll drive you the least crazy.
Yeah.
But just explaining percentages and macronutrients can get a little bit complicated. But I do use that exact approach.
Oh, cool.
I would say early on, I was a little bit more strict about like, I need to get 30 fats, 50 carbs. But I think in the last year and a half, I just have my calorie goal. I either, I'm in a surplus, maintenance, or deficit, whatever. And then I try to get 40% protein. And I don't really care what the other two are.
Yeah.
So if that's all in check, then I try, timing up carbs before and after workouts to maximize workouts. Then that's step 2. If that's in check, that's pretty much all you really got to look at, in my opinion. I'm a big believer in, at the end of the day, what were your calories? How did they compare to your expenditure and stuff like that?
Sure. So kind of going back to your, you said leading up to this powerlifting competition, you still have some time, but you have like quite a bit of weight to lose. Mm-hmm. What's kind of going to be your approach leading up into that, and like trying to maintain as much strength as possible while like losing?
Yeah. So that's a great question. This is hands down probably the hardest part of lifting or powerlifting is the cutting weight aspect. Yeah. And let's see. Right now, I would try to cut down to about 195. If I'm starting around like 205, that range, cut down to like 195 in as long of a time span as possible. So let's say the meet is in like November. I think it's sometime in the fall. So I have plenty of time. So I probably won't even start eating in a calorie deficit or anything of that nature until maybe 4 or 5 months out. Okay. As you know, you don't want to lose more than a pound a week when trying to maintain, or dare I say, even gain muscle in a deficit. So yeah, I would say probably about 6 weeks out maximum, I'll probably start eating a deficit. And as you know, that's extremely far away. So my only goal right now is to just not get much more fat than I already am. So I don't have to make it harder on myself.
Yeah.
So yeah, right now I'm just going to try to, like we talked about, eat baseline, stay where I'm at, and just continue to get stronger. And that's pretty much all that's on my mind right now. So
what's the next weight class up?
That would be 198. So 90 kilograms.
What was kind of your approach in deciding which one to go for?
I used to do 198. And, when you compete in smaller federations, like the ones I did starting out, they're kind of more low key. You'll probably go in there, you'll see some guys who are really strong, but for the most part, that's, a fairly beginner federation. And those were the first couple competitions I did at 198. So it was like, it wasn't that hard to, be successful or do well. But if I did 198 in like the USAPL or one of the main federations, anything IPF, they would wipe the floor with me in that weight class. So the 83 kilograms, which is where I maintained my body weight up until the day before this quarantine started, That's ideally where I'd like to sit, around 190, where I can just comfortably cut water right before the competition. Yeah, that's pretty much the goal moving forward, if all goes perfectly planned, but we'll see. So,
Then, do you weigh in the day before for that competition, or is it the day of?
so the USAPL, just to make it harder on everybody, makes it the day of.
Okay.
So it's like that morning. So if you're good at manipulating your water intake, it's something I have done a million times for wrestling and bodybuilding. I should be okay, but I got to really make sure I don't screw up, like, my performance the next day. So I think having a wrestling background helps with that a little bit, but
Then are you housing food the day of?
Yeah.
Like right after you weigh in?
Right, like immediately right after. It's I think the last meet, me and Calvin Gunn. Do you know Calvin Gunn?
Yeah.
Yeah, we had like 11 bagels each. It was insane.
Cow.
Yeah, it was nuts. Yeah, that's a good moment right after you weigh in. Just get to max out on some food.
Yeah.
But yeah, let's see, anything else that we haven't quite covered? I know I went off a lot of rants there.
Let's kind of shift over to like the bodybuilding side of things. So what year did you compete in bodybuilding? You did it once, right?
Yeah, I just did the one show. Okay. So that was 2016.
Okay.
Yeah, that was 2016. And yeah, that was quite an experience. It was an NPC show, the National Physique Committee.
Okay.
Honestly, I'm so happy that I did do it. I literally did not care at all what I placed. I was happy as hell with the way I looked the day of and like leading up to it. So like, I just wanted to get the show over with so I could freaking eat everything for weeks. But like, I seriously didn't care what I placed. There were some people who were so bent out of shape, and it's like, dude, look at you. You're like 5% body fat, which is like impossible.
Yeah.
And, they look awesome. And it's just like, what are you so down about? So bodybuilding is one of those sports, literally depends on who the hell shows up. The biggest, best bodybuilder ever could show up to your show, an amateur show, for no reason.
Sure.
And just clean up.
Yeah.
So it's like, why are you even comparing yourself to that guy or the person next to you? So I was happy I did it. I thought I looked good. I think if I had to guess, I probably got down to 6 or 7% body fat. Nothing too absurd.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was very taxing. The process was very difficult. I did a keto diet actually, which I don't recommend.
For the whole thing, or just towards the end? Did you do
I think it was the last, I want to say 8 weeks.
Oh wow.
Maybe 5. I don't remember. But yeah, that was weird. So the keto thing, I think it's very effective. And Chase, we could also do another video chat regarding keto for another time, because I'm sure we have tons of mouthfuls to say about it.
Yeah.
But, yeah, and the Spark Notes version is I wish I didn't take that approach. I lost a lot more muscle mass than I probably needed to.
Okay.
Just by doing keto diet in general.
Yeah.
Not to mention I was still in school, and I legit like failed all my finals because like I was just not there mentally like at all. So yeah, that was pretty terrible.
How low were you in carbs? Were you like?
I think the lowest I got to was like the final like 3 weeks leading up to the peak week. I'm pretty sure I was at like 24 carbs.
Oh,
so I was at like 12 carbs before my workout. That was my pre-workout. It was like a rice cake with like an oat in the middle. And then I was like 24 carbs or 12 carbs right after.
Wow. Your nervous system was probably just like cash at that point.
Yeah, dude. It was like
brain.
The lifts were terrible. There came a certain point where you couldn't even hit compound lifts anymore.
Yeah.
And like just the movements were very hard. You had to use very minimal resistance, a lot of isolation exercises, very low intensity. But even that, I remember doing like leg extensions, and I was like cramping up like crazy and just like fatigued as hell. And I was like, I literally feel like I'm dying, like for lack of better terms.
Yeah.
And which you more or less are, you're actually killing yourself and your body's eating away at itself. That's what it feels like though. Yeah. Absolutely. The last thing I remember it was like May. I think it was like May or even June. And I was freezing cold all the time. Like I don't know if that's just because I had no fat or barely any fat on my body, or if that's a symptom of keto diets, but I was freezing.
Yeah.
I probably got sick, to be honest with you. I have no idea, but it lasted for like 3 weeks and it was bad.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's that. There's my bodybuilding prep.
Would you ever do it again? Another bodybuilding show?
I would say definitely, because there's so much I've improved on since 2016. And I'm a very big proponent of the easiest indicator of muscle mass is strength. Obviously, that doesn't 100% translate probably, but like it's a very good idea. And if you look at my strength now versus what it was in 2016, I'm pretty sure if I dropped down to 6% body fat, it would be, wouldn't even look like me up there. So eventually I would love to do another one. But as you know, it's you got to be ready to sacrifice a lot of straight up progress that you've put on.
Yeah.
You're literally sacrificing muscle just to see what you look like shredded as hell.
Yeah.
So it is a backwards process in that regard, but I definitely see myself doing it at some point. So
yeah. I think you learn your body too at like a whole new level, like get down to that lean.
Absolutely. You really do.
You see, like if you eat something, you're like, oh wow, when I eat this, my body reacts this way. If I eat, you know what I'm saying? Like sweet potato, this is how my body reacts on this lean. Like you really notice like every single thing in how
literally every little detail, like down to the milligram of sodium. It's just like, okay. So yeah, you're absolutely right. So in that regard, there is a lot of stuff you learn about yourself doing a bodybuilding show. A lot of stuff that I applied to my diet up until even now. So like it's like 10 years later or whatever. It's like I'm still doing the same type of macronutrient percentage-based calculations, calorie deficits that I used when I was doing my bodybuilding show.
Sure.
So I learned a lot about my expenditure, how much I'm actually burning, how much walking up the stairs just burned for me. Like literally, it's all those little things you learn about your body when doing a bodybuilding show. So because you got to monitor all of that.
Yeah. And this could go for kind of anyone for who's trying to like lose weight, but I'm kind of geared towards you in bodybuilding. But there's a couple different approaches you could take as you're trying to create that calorie deficit by either one, upping your cardio, two, lowering your calories, or both. So kind of what was your approach leading up? Did you go like pretty heavy cardio? I know some people do no cardio and just lower their calories. I know some people do a mixture of both, and some people go.
Yeah, I'm definitely been known to be the bare minimum of like I said, in my opinion, train smarter, not harder. And I'm not saying that I was the smartest when I did it, but I was too lazy to do any cardio for the most part. So I was eating a lot less. I just cut calories from my intake. Yeah, I didn't increase my expenditure at all.
Okay.
Is that the approach for everybody? Absolutely not. Obviously, if you have somebody who actually likes running and enjoys it, run with that, literally roll with that. Use that to your advantage, create a massive calorie deficit by implementing cardio into your training. If you like that. Yeah. For me personally, I did not. So I was eating very, very little. I don't think that's the way to go, but since I refused to do a lot of cardio, I mean, it worked okay for me for the most part.
Yeah, I think that's a good like viewpoint too to have. Like, there's not just one way.
Yeah, absolutely not.
To do it to create the deficit. If you're someone who wants to do more cardio, you can. If you don't want to do a lot of cardio, you could still get great.
Yeah, and I think if you're competing for a bodybuilding show or training for something like that, or you want to look great for a wedding 3 weeks, then sure, you could be a little bit more strict about it. But like me and you talked about, we're just kind of trying to figure out ways to sustain this, achieve our goals with not going crazy. Yeah. So what I do is I have my Fitbit. How accurate these things are in counting calories, I don't really know, but it's like anything else. Put your height, weight, all that, just like any other fitness tracker. And I always go off of this in terms of my expenditure and my intake. So if I'm trying to lose a pound a week, I am doing my best to make sure I'm 500 calories less than this number at the end of the day. And if I'm not anywhere close, or I notice I'm a little falling behind that day, I'll get up and walk around the block, or take my dog for a walk, or, take the stairs instead of the elevator to work. Just something like that. So it's over time, those little things that you learn, like the smallest little things add up and they really make the biggest difference once you get better at it.
Yeah.
So yeah, figuring out your body's expenditure and intake and then manipulating it in the easiest way for you, I think is the best way to approach it. But
Yeah, absolutely. And now we're going to shift back over to, well, kind of a little bit of both, but so I think you would be like the perfect person to ask. So we'll start with like a deadlift. You have any like good tips for someone to up there? Are you a sumo or are you conventional?
Conventional.
Conventional. Do you have like
Yeah.
a quick deadlift tip or something like that for someone who?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to try not to rant on this one too hard, but one of the things that truly, this is for people who know, basic fundamentals, form first comes before everything.
Yeah.
So if you're looking for a little bit extra tip to, carry maximum loads with deadlifting, I would say learning how to load your hips properly is something that as of right now has helped me tremendously. And I'm just now learning how to truly engage my hips as I, so what I'm looking for, as I like brace my core, inhale into the belly. I'm learning how to push my hips out, push my knees out properly, and just generate tons more force that way. That's probably not the best tip for everybody, but I'm just learning it now, so I'm biased towards it.
Yeah.
One thing that helped me tremendously with deadlifting is learning how to brace your core, period. Inhaling all that air and creating maximum intra-abdominal pressure. When I wasn't doing that, that's how I herniated my lower back, which we could talk more about too. But I like literally herniated my L5S1. I couldn't even move for like a year. It was terrible. And that was from me not knowing how to brace my core properly. They teach you really early on, inhale on the way down, exhale on the way up, inhale eccentrically constant. So like, is that safe? Yeah. But when you're dealing with maximum loads and when you're maxing 1 to 3 reps or even 5 reps on squat or deadlift, you need to know how to stabilize your lower back by breathing a crap ton of air into your stomach. Once I figured that out, we're talking like it felt way better immediately. Something you could try immediately. It might be weird, but you'll definitely feel more stable just by practicing that breathing when you lift. So yeah, you can look that up. That's called core bracing your core. The Valsalva maneuver, if you may. So something that helped me tremendously with deadlifts and squats was
a big one.
Learning. Yeah, it's huge. So
and now do we want to get into bench from like a powerlifting perspective? How do you move the most amount? Like, what are you thinking as you get into a bench to move the most amount of weight possible?
So great question. Because a lot of people ask me, they're like, why do you arch like absurdly when you bench? Is that good for your back? All these questions about the technique I have when I powerlift. I guess the answer is like any sport. It's not like good for you to play football necessarily for like your joints, your bones, all that stuff. Powerlifting is a sport, just like CrossFit's a sport. People always crap on CrossFit because they say it's like super dangerous. But the reality of it is, like any other sport, you got to be willing to, kind of put your body at risk if you actually compete. So when I bench, for example, I do have like an absurd arch that is single-handedly what gives me the best advantage when bench pressing. So is it safe? Probably not ideally. You always want to have your core engaged, pushing your lower back into whatever the floor of the bench is. But like you said, is it ideal to move the most amount of possible weight? Yeah, I would say definitely. So I would have to go with learning how to do a proper arch is what helped me the most. So in powerlifting, they make sure that your head's touching, your feet and heels are flat, and that your butt is touching the bench. So what I do is I dig my upper traps, like literally right in here, and I'll dig that into the bench and pinch them together as tight as possible. Some people put their feet up and then they do like a bridge and drive their upper traps nice and tight into the bench. And then they set their feet. And now you have this like crazy bridge like that, like wrestlers do. And then that's when you slowly kind of drop your butt. And then once it's touching the bench, you're good to go. So you got to keep it there. If you watch any of my videos, you'll see me do pretty much that exact process. I start by digging my upper traps, and then I kind of like kick back, get it all nice and tight. I'm literally, this is the point of contact with the bench when I'm pressing. So then I set my feet, and then I lower, drop my butt. Once it's hitting the bench, you're good to unrack. So if you can master a bridge, work on your thoracic mobility, your lumbar, thoracic flexibility, your lumbar flexibility, if you work on all those things and just really focus on, creating a strong and tight arch, you can push a lot of weight that way. It just makes your shoulder blades so much tighter. It makes your core, ready and engaged. You get a lot of leg drive that way too. That was probably the best thing for me bench press wise that, really helped me out.
Yeah, I think that would help a lot. And then where do you touch usually? Where do you shoot to like your touch point as you come down?
So I have really freaking long arms. And if you have long arms, typically you want to go a wider grip, just general rule of thumb. So for me with a wide grip, I'm touching pretty much right at the sternum, like literally right where my nipples are. Maybe even a little bit below nipples, but yeah, right at the sternum. Somebody who has a close grip, bench or a closer grip, shorter arms, and they're going like this, when they go down, they're probably going to touch a little bit lower, like on the top of their abdomen almost. And anybody who goes even wider, they're probably going to bring it down like right here. So it kind of depends on where your grip is. If you're somebody with regular arms and you're doing pinkies on the rings when you bench, I would say hitting your sternum is a good general rule of thumb for that. So
awesome. Well, we covered a lot of good stuff. I'm trying to think if there's anything else that could be. What would you think, like an overall theme? Let's say someone who wants to we'll start someone who just wants to get into powerlifting and move the most amount of weight possible. What would be like a few tips you would give them, or like things you've learned throughout your years that would make their process like a little better, like what to focus on?
Yeah.
Like one thing we mentioned earlier was like the progressive overload or anything like that, or just things that you've learned throughout your years to help the process.
I would say single-handedly the first and by far most important thing you should look at is your protein intake. For obviously you could make that argument for any sport or goal, body composition, whatever, but especially for powerlifters, if you're trying to get as strong as possible and compete in powerlifting someday, but you're just kind of brushing off the whole intake part of it and brushing off the macros, again, you're shooting yourself in the foot if you're not getting enough protein in. And like I said, you could have the best workout program ever, and you're going to see minimal progress. A lot of times people who are beginners can get away with a little bit more because their body's just going to get stronger just from them doing it, period. But sooner or later, the more experience you get, everybody needs to be looking at that protein intake in order to see, in my opinion, any results. So that would be my advice, is look at that, see what your protein goal should be, and then do your best to monitor, because I've had so many clients who just ask me questions. They're like, I want to get as strong as possible. I want to put on muscle. And then I'm like, do you log your protein? They're like, no. I was like, okay, do me a favor, log your protein. They're like, oh, I take whey, so I'm good. And it's like, that's not at all how that works.
Yeah.
So they think like just because they take whey protein, like they're getting all their protein. I'm like, do me a favor, log just for a day, and come back to me. And let's say we're talking to somebody who's like 200 pounds. They'll be like, all right, check it out. And they've had like 35 grams of protein the day before. And it's like, what the hell? That's not even close. So, a guy like that should be getting over 100, in my opinion. 200-pound guy, over 100 grams of protein. If he just did that, I'm sure his lifts would skyrocket.
Yeah.
So that's probably my biggest piece of advice is, really learning your diet and being, making it a skill to just know your body in and out diet wise. And you're going to see just like so much results that way.
Yeah. Awesome. That's good stuff.
Yeah.
And then another thing we kind of covered, I think we talked about this a while back, but a big thing too, I'm sure you see it too, but like hydration. I think that's a big thing that like people do not realize, like how dehydrated they are going throughout the day.
Yeah, that's Yeah, exactly, man. You said it perfectly. That's right there with the protein intake thing. I think you actually made the post about hydration a little while back. And when I reposted it, one of the things I said is like, if you literally took any given population of people, like 100% of them are dehydrated, or just like some absurd stat. So it's like, you really got to focus on your hydration. I noticed for me, when it's in the summertime and it's hotter out, I really, really got to hone in on it, because I start to cramp up in the middle of the night. My lifts are terrible because you're just sweating more. You're dehydrated as hell. So especially now it's starting to get warmer out. I think that's another big thing, that if you're neglecting, you're not monitoring your hydration, and you're not seeing progress in the gym, you're not having good workouts, that's probably a really good underlying indicator right there. Getting more water in. So, yeah.
Good stuff, man. Well, I appreciate you taking the time to go over this. I know, like, even when you talk, I learn a lot. I'm sure everyone else who's listening to this is learning a lot as well. So where could everyone find you for programming or any of that stuff? Would be a good place to reach you?
Yeah, so you can email me at progressiveperformance1@gmail.com. And you can follow me on Instagram, Nico's Got Workouts. And then you can look at my Facebook page, which is Gradual Overload Theory. The GOT, that's a play on words of Gradual Overload Theory. So when you see GOT and everything that I make, that's what it means.
Game of Thrones, little Game of Thrones.
And yeah, if anyone catches that, I invented GOT as a shout out to Game of Thrones. But now that that's a thing of the past, it really doesn't make sense. Awesome. But yeah. So, dude, Chase, thank you so much for doing this with me, man. This is good stuff. We covered a lot of crap, so we should definitely do this again sometime.
Yeah, no doubt. You want to give people one good Peter Griffin? You do Peter Griffin, right?
Oh, God. Yeah, I do.
One good Peter Griffin impersonation before putting you on the spot here.
Yeah. I want to thank God, and I guess I want to thank the devil too, because if he didn't exist, God would probably die of boredom.
I just watched the episodes. Peter joins the New England Patriots, so he's giving like his thanks speech.
That's spot on. Follow him on TikTok too for more Peter Griffin.
Oh yeah, hit me up on TikTok. Nico.Chiodo on TikTok.
There you go.
Just Peter Griffin all day long. So yeah. Thanks again, Chase.
Yeah, appreciate it, man. And thank you everyone for listening. Tune in. Should be sometime later this week for another one, but thanks for watching.